Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to see you. I hope you're having a wonderful reunion visit. It's exciting to welcome you here today to the 10th annual Dwelling of the Gallant, a wonderful event where we take time to recognize, honor, and celebrate women of Williams by sharing in the stories and experiences of featured alumni speakers from across classes celebrating their reunions. Over the past few years, we've been acknowledging the important milestone in the college's path towards co-education. And this reunion weekend, we have another opportunity to honor this moment as we continue to celebrate more than 50 years of co-education. As many of you know, it was not until 1971 that 7 women walked across the Williams commencement stage to receive diplomas for the first time in the college's history. In the fall of 1971, the first 4-year class of women and men arrived on campus, and the classes of 1972, 1973, and 1974 subsequently graduated a number of women who had transferred into the college, and there were many more who spent extensive time here as exchange students. These early women were path breakers, and on behalf of all who followed them, we thank you. By expanding access to women and others who had not historically been included at Williams, the college doubled down on its commitment to educating those who could go into the world to make a difference. And as a result, our impact is all the broader and deeper. This is something Jack Sawyer understood and moved to do in pursuing co-education. Early efforts to diversify the student body evolved into important and sometimes challenging efforts to ensure women felt the same sense of belonging at Williams as their male counterparts. And we continue to strive to be an inclusive learning community in which all can thrive. We have deep commitments to caring, collaboration, and dialogue across differences as we continue the essential work of preparing the next generation of leaders, a set of qualities and traits that we can see, again, all too often, how important it is to master those skills. The women on stage today here all experienced very different Williams from each other. Their individual journeys have led them here to share their stories, and I hope you'll refer to the print program for full introductions, but I am going to briefly welcome each one of them before I turn the floor over to them. So I begin immediately to my left with Michele Rogers from the class of 1979. So Michele is a member of the 5th class of 4-year co-educational women at Williams, and today she serves as Director of Chicago Partnerships and Clinical Assistant Professor of Nonprofit Executive Education for Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management. In these capacities, Michele is a liaison to nonprofit organizations in the Chicago area, developing academic programs supporting business growth, and board leadership. She has managed admissions for Kellogg, Metal, and Harvard Business School, and she previously held assistant dean positions in experiential learning and student academic affairs. Michele has consulted for Fortune 500 companies and was part of the manufacturing startup Consolidated Diesel Co. She holds an MBA from Harvard, and perhaps most importantly to me is finishing a 5-year term on the Williams Board of Trustees. So thank you for your service, Michele. And now I continue to move down the line to introduce Naree Viner, class of 1989, of which I am an honorary member myself. So very excited to welcome back a classmate. Thank you. Nari is an executive recruiter with over 2 decades of experience working exclusively with mission-driven organizations, currently a managing director at Koya Partners, part of Diversified Search Group. She previously worked at Korn Ferry and Heidrick & Struggles. Widely regarded as one of the top search consultants in the field, Nari possesses particular expertise working with art and history museums. She's placed directors at the Clark, the Kimball, the Menal, and the Phillips Collection, as well as academic art museums at Harvard, Yale, and even, yes, Amherst's Mead Art Museum. She has also recruited directors for the Smithsonian, as well as newly founded museums such as the International African American Museum in Charleston. And Nari holds an MA in art history from the University of Washington. Please welcome her. Star Hampton from the class of 1994. Star is professor of obstetrics and gynecology and medical science and senior associate dean for medical education at Brown University's Warren Alpert Medical School. She previously served as the chief education officer for the CARE New England Health System and as the interim chair and chief of obstetrics and gynecology at Brown Medical School, where she's been on the faculty since 2006. Star currently serves as president of the Society of Gynecological Surgeons and holds current and past leadership roles in many national organizations, including the International Organization for Women and Development. With an interest in global health, Star leads a team of physicians annually to sub-Saharan Africa for obstetric repair and education. She received her medical degree from Mount Sinai and completed her residency and fellowship trainings at NYU School of Medicine. Welcome. And last but not least, in the lineup of chairs, Monsie Muñoz from the class of 2009. Monsie is a first-generation Latina who grew up in Dallas. She now serves as the Director of Equity and Inclusion at Greenwood Hill School in Addison, Texas. She's a product of public and private schools, and she started teaching soon after graduating from Williams. She has over 10 years of experience as a pre-K to 12 educator, through which she became involved in DEI work. As a DEI practitioner, Monsie supports the creation of equitable and inclusive institutional policies and practices. She loves working with students to build leadership skills and competencies that empower them to create change in their schools. Monsie holds an MA from Columbia University in educational leadership and currently serves on the executive committee for the Society of Alumni. Thank you and welcome. So please join me in warmly welcoming our 4 alumni speakers, each of them making tremendous impacts across education and nonprofit, and we will begin with remarks from Michele. Thank you.
I had to get up early just in case I couldn't make it. On Wednesday, I enjoyed attending The Notebook on Broadway with my play sister from our frenemy, Wesleyan. It's a simple, charmingly weepy story of a couple who find their way back together after several mishaps and illnesses. I think the story resonates with many because there's love, humor, heartbreak, hope, and creating space. Dwelling includes creating space for yourself and making space for others. It's a great notion that I experienced at Williams, and I hope you did too. I've interspersed a few photos of family and friends, Williams friends, to claim your mental space from musings such as, I heard blank is back on the market, maybe we should get together after class. The USA cover was the result of a lovely letter submitted by my former husband, Stephen Rogers, 79, about me being a great working mom. On a related note, during our senior year, Steve's 5-year-old sister, Laura, came to live with us and attend school in Williamstown. Their mother was very ill, and Laura needed more support. It was a joy and pain, like sunshine and rain. Today, I'm proud that Laura works with behaviorally challenged adults in Rockford, Illinois. Well, who runs the world? Girls, right? According to B, as in the noted luminary Beyonce, girls run the world. Allow me to introduce a few very important women in my story right away. Our older daughter, Akila, class of 2004, and Ariel, our younger, renegade, non-Williams, Princeton daughter, gave me purpose and true joy. Now, 2 momentous Williams women firsts. The appointment of President Maud Mandel, our gifted and charming academician and dancer extraordinaire. She's awesome. On her watch, the selection of the amazingly talented Liz Robinson, 1990, to chair the Williams Board of Trustees. They have done a fantastic job. I don't think Liz is here. Is Liz here? Yeah, okay. Let's clap for her anyway. It's awesome. It's amazing. They have done a fantastic job during a perpetually turmoiling time with COVID, civic and social unrest, and national and international conflict. By the way, I'm campaigning, for turmoiling to become a word. So I talked about taking space. I have a loving, fun, crazy, hardworking, mostly blue-collar family with several generations of 10 or more children. My family is so big that I didn't realize my first cousin Derek was at Williams as a senior until I arrived as a freshman. True story. We were driving, my uncle said, "I think I've been this way before." They all guided me with love and discipline. In fact, family led me to believe I could do anything. The grands, aunts, uncles, and cousins clapped and asked me to sing it, recite it, play it, and dance again at our weekly gatherings. I since learned that my pipes aren't too good, and I don't dance so well either, but there was joy and pain in any true relationship, and I love family. So it's very cool that Williams became family, as I experienced encouragement and discipline, joy and some pain in a number of ways. Details to come. Raised in the church, faith plays a key role in my relationship with the world. For example, I try to live by Luke 12:28, which tells us that to whom much is given, much is expected. I know many of you know this one. Basically, it says that if we've been blessed with talents, wealth, knowledge, time, and the like, it is expected that we will use it to benefit others. It is also noted that we will be taking some blows if we don't do it. So, just so you know. But let's focus on the positive here. The positive that Williams has used its remarkable resources to make fantastic spaces for others. Oh, I'm sorry. Got a little off track here. Oh, no, I didn't. I'm sorry, I thought I did. I was blessed with incredible educations. Hathaway Brown School for Young Ladies, where we discuss the how and why of world events, with questions like, how did Hitler come to power? And could World War II happen again? Now, we were pretty young. We don't really know that much, but we felt very grown up and heady having those discussions. I credit my advanced elementary school classes in Cleveland public schools, too. Why and how was I selected to take French and Spanish and give 2-minute erudite talks on deep subjects like cats and other World Book research topics in 3rd grade? Why? And most of my most memorable teachers were women. Well, truth be told, back in my day, probably 90% of primary teachers were women, but stats can ruin a good story. And this brings me to Williams, our amazing alma mater. Here are more family and Williams friends, including commencement. And there's Ken, Aline, and Ray Whiteman, whose families are major supporters of the beautiful New Davis Center. Remember the BSU parties and the feasts we used to have? It was awesome. The feast was, everybody brought their mom's best dish, and it was amazing time. I hope they bring that back. We missed board trustee Jeff Delaney, whose family also supported generously as well. And you have to understand, I had to give a few props to men for diversity and inclusion. So making space for others, I really do try to make space for others, and this list provides a sample of things I do. I must note just 2 points. One is that I do a lot of work targeting under-resourced areas. I feel so very privileged that I grew up in an area that was very under-resourced, and I can see the benefits of every little thing and every big thing anyone does. So it actually is very important to me, but it also feels good. And I've had the true honor and privilege of serving with Brooks and the AOC team and with the Williams Board of Trustees, as Ma mentioned, 2 wonderfully enriching experiences focusing on making a better Williams. If you have the opportunity, please do it. It's an amazing experience. More shenanigans with family and friends. Didn't know they'd be quite this big. I'm the oldest and shortest of 6 siblings. We're first gen. My mom and dad finished high school and 6th grade, respectively. My father was on a farm and had to start working. Now, I talk a lot about joy and pain. That's a Frankie Beverly and May song, if you don't know. I'll try not to sing it. Okay, I'm gonna sing it. Joy and pain is like sunshine and rain. There we go, okay. Why did they make me think I could sing? I don't even know what that was about. Okay, but I tend to focus on the joy, but Creating space can sometimes be painful or just really, really hard work. Note that these are some of the ways you can make personal space for others. I won't go over them because you can read. But Williams has been a great joy with some pain as well. I remember when the financial aid person said I should stay home next term as I didn't have enough money for tuition. Instead, Steve and I took on more jobs at Williams, including monitoring deer hunters in Hopkins Forest. Paid 4 times what I got at the mailroom. I remember the black female basketball coach was assigned to be my freshman advisor for science and math classes. Beautiful, lovely woman. Sure, take physics, calculus, psych, and history as your gut. That'll work. The history department was the #1 department in the country at the time. Wish we'd known that. But I love it. I remember going with the varsity volleyball coach to get money for our travel expenses, and athletic director Coach Peck reached in his pocket for gas and lunch money for our trip in a van, plus 2 of our student cars. The football team rolled out in a cushiony coach bus. I remember the good things, too. I remember growing with my roommates, Danette in New York City, Karen in Denver, and she's here, I think, Kathy from Compton, who sadly passed away a few years ago. I remember a scholarship to train at the Olympic volleyball camp in Fishkill, New York. I remember the pleasure of getting to know Manette and security staff like Bill Buzel while working the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. switchboard. In those days, when you made a call, we had to connect it. And if you didn't click the button, we could hear everything you did. Just letting you know. Luckily, we're not the kind of people to talk. So, I remember Williams arranged for Steve to have an apartment at the foot of Spring Street when Laura came to live here. I remember Winter Studies' Black Movements and the Black Magic basketball team who was killing everybody until White Lightning showed up. I remember when 2 clueless students decided in March to get married on campus the day before graduation in June. Williams showed out, providing a dorm for our families and friends, charging only for linens, which they later gave the money to us, moving the faculty celebration to the president's house so we could host our reception at the faculty house. And my mailroom supervisor, Mrs. Marlowe, y'all remember Miss Marlowe in the mailroom? Mrs. Marlowe provided the 3-layer cake, and she painted the couple brown for us. Of course, I recognize that sometimes the pain was caused by my choices, but I'm almost out of time, so we're not going to do those. So basically, what I want to say is that it was definitely more joy than pain at Williams. This is just more of what we experienced. In the lower left, the Williams varsity basketball team helped our manager, Ronald Lone, class of '77, earn the Guinness World Record for eating the most ice cream in a minute. We always did heady things. We always did. Sadly, this very important record was broken a few years ago. I've been given much more than is expected. You too have been entrusted with more. A tremendous education, more intellect, more opportunity, more support. So do more. In this anxious, divisive time, I ask you to actualize Dr. Martin Luther King's quote: "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I only wear glasses to see distance, so I'm now going to take them off so I can read my talk. I'm going to start here. Thank you for being here today when I know there's a lot that can be done on an afternoon in Williamstown during reunion weekend, so all of us appreciate your joining us here. For those of you unfamiliar, Dwelling of the Gallant invites Williams women to share, quote, how they make meaning of their relationship and experience with Williams, and how they make meaning of their contributions to the world. To put myself in the proper frame of mind to tell my story, I watched the YouTube videos for dwelling sessions going back a decade. You can get these, and I would recommend them highly. This was different than my usual YouTube fare of BTS videos. Ask me later if you actually want to know more. It was hugely inspiring, illuminating, and intimidating. I'm here today following in a long line of accomplished women who have taken incredibly varied paths. My first thought, I'd better come up with something that would stand the test of YouTube time. I'll start by relaying how my relationship with Williams began, and for that, we have to go all the way around the world to Bangkok, where my parents, Vachara and Yonggatsong Sanat, met during medical school at Sirirat Hospital, which is now part of Mahidol University. That is their 25th reunion yearbook from the class of 1963 at Sirirat. I've learned in doing research for this talk that Sirirat, established in 1889, is the oldest and top medical school in Thailand. My parents were both students at the country's flagship university, Chulalongkorn, where after 2 years of undergraduate study, they passed the entrance exams for medical school, graduating in Sirirat's class of 1963. They were in a 6-year medical program. First note, a foreshadowing for those keeping track. And after earning their MDs, they came to the US to do training in anesthesia. They both ended up in Chicago for their residencies, my mom at the University of Chicago and my dad at Northwestern. Another bit of foreshadowing. He had a car, she didn't, so he took her grocery shopping around town. They fell in love, got married in 1966. They got married in 1966 and I arrived in 1967, the first in our family born in the US. My sister Tal, Williams' class of 1990, came along a year later. We moved back to Thailand in 1969. My parents built a house. We were going to stay there. We lived with my maternal grandparents. My other sister, Kwan, who's Bryn Mawr, class of 92, arrived just as I started nursery school in Bangkok. But recognizing that they wanted to give their children broader educational opportunities, my parents decided to move back to the US in 1972. We settled in Northwest Indiana, a bedroom community about an hour from Chicago. My dad's mentor from Northwestern told him a new hospital was opening in Northwest Indiana and needed doctors of all types. So these are my parents' pages from their reunion book from the first slide. That's how a community of 15 Thai families, mainly doctors, ended up in the area in and around Crown Point, Indiana. There were anesthesiologists like my parents, cardiac surgeons, ophthalmologists, pediatricians, OB-GYNs, ENTs, radiologists, oncologists, you name it, we probably had one. Counting my parents' other classmates who lived in the Chicago suburbs and in Michigan and Ohio, there are about 25 Thai families, most of the parents in the medical field, and many from Sirirat. With at least 2 kids in each family, all told, we numbered over 100 Thai people. Why all of this backstory? Because in many ways, that Sirirat class of 1963 was for my parents the equivalent of what Williams, particularly the great class of 1989, is to me the source of my dearest friends, my steady supports, an amazing network, and the core community that is there for one another through thick and thin. It was only because of my parents' Sirirat classmate, Dr. Suryappa, and his wife, whom I call Auntie Noi, and their son Sexum, class of 88, that I even heard about Williams. In the summer of '84, Auntie Noi offered to take me to see some colleges in the Northeast. Now, this wasn't on my family's radar at all, since growing up in a community of Thai doctors in the Midwest and being the dutiful eldest daughter, the plan was that I was going to become a doctor, attend the 6-year medical program at Northwestern, which my dad's mentor ran. That's the end of the foreshadowing portion. But since they knew the Suryappas so well, they said I could go. We toured Amherst, meh, Smith, Holyoke, and Williams, and I fell in love with this place immediately. I'm eternally grateful to my Auntie Noi for suggesting that trip. It is no exaggeration to state that coming to Williams changed the course of my life in every way. It was the first of a few forks in the road that I have taken. After I was accepted, my parents had questions. What about Northwestern and medical school? Many of you will remember Professor Jim Skinner, who was then Williams' pre-med advisor. He called my father. I wish I could ask him how he knew to do this. They talked, and Professor Skinner told my father, if Nari is going to be a doctor, she'll be a doctor whether she goes to Williams or Northwestern. But if she goes to Williams, she will be a more well-rounded doctor. Thanks to those ifs, perhaps no truer words were ever spoken. So my parents okayed my going to Williams. Side note, my younger brothers, Nick and Nat, went to Northwestern. They're the twins in there. None of us became doctors, though Quan is a dentist from Penn. The next major fork in the road came when my suite mates at Gladden, and they're in the audience. That's Kay Fan Kane over there, Lynn Underhill Nooner over there, and Stephanie Ratton over there. They told me to sign up for art history, because all of them, they were all taking it, and they said it's the best class to take at Williams. So I did, even though I had no idea what art history was. That same year, I also took the requisite thinner of pre-med ranks organic chemistry. Professor Blatchley, it was his first year teaching Orgo, he took mercy on me because I didn't get it at all. I probably should have failed. I didn't understand it. But art history was completely different. It came naturally to me. Professors Eva Gruden and E.J. Johnson made all those slides in that dark room into images that I could decode. Unlike Orgo, I understood and loved art history from the get-go, so I declared myself a pre-med art history major. I wouldn't realize I didn't want to go to medical school for another year, but that's a different speech. I now call myself a wayward pre-med. These are my parents from the 60s and this January in 2024. I want to take a moment here to thank my parents. They're going to watch this later, I think. Sincerely and deeply for not pulling me out of Williams when I told them I don't want to be a doctor. Those of you who are the children of Asian immigrants know what I'm talking about. My decision confused and worried them. Medicine had been their path to security and success in a new country. It allowed them to give to their 5 children opportunities that they had never had. It must have been especially strange to them since virtually all of their friends were in the medical field. That's all they really knew. As my father once put it, art is a good hobby, but what will your job be? It took them nearly a decade to begin to see that I could have a real, if nonlinear, career outside of medicine. But amidst their disappointment and concern, they never wavered in their love and support for me, and for that, I'm forever grateful. I thank them every year, actually. In the 5 years after Williams, more forks in the road followed. I lived, studied, and worked in Tokyo, thanks to Professor Frost, then Seattle, then landed in Los Angeles after grad school. In every one of those places, there were Williams people to welcome me. And more than 13 years ago, when my husband Michael and I relocated from LA to Connecticut with our 3 young sons, it was my Williams classmates Lynn and Rob Nooner who anchored us when we initially arrived in Darien and settled in Westport, where we now live. It's been said before, Williams truly gave me the ability to learn how to learn. After my MA in art history, I arrived in LA for an internship at the Getty, where my project was creating a website. This was in 1994, the dawn of the web, the bleeding edge. This 1-year internship became a 5-year stint, which in turn led me to the .com world. Another Williams connection was there too, for a couple of tumultuous years. Internet bubble bursting. I landed next at a nonprofit childcare organization as a roving project manager. One of the projects I managed was the presidential search, and the firm that did that search recruited me, which is how I became an executive recruiter in 2004. So this is why, when I introduce myself to clients, I say that I'm the poster child for liberal arts education and nonlinear paths. Executive search turned out to be the thing I was ideally suited to do, that I was built to do, given all I had done before. As an extreme extrovert, compared to my introvert husband and sons, my closest friends say that my superpower is being a connector in the Malcolm Gladwell mold from The Tipping Point. Gladwell describes connectors as people who tend to be connected to many communities. whether through interests and hobbies, jobs that cause them to work with people in other fields, or other experiences. Their strength is in occupying many different worlds and bringing them together. That is me in a nutshell. Speaking of connectors, it was because of Williams that I met my husband, Michael, RIT, class of 1992, the most important relationship in my life. We met through my classmate, Julie Jacobson Kelly, who's here, and her husband, Bill, and we asked Julie and Bill, who had been introduced by our classmates, Cooper Campbell Jackson and her husband, Hayes, to speak at our wedding. This is the picture from our wedding, the Williams picture, that I never sent to the Alumni Review, so I made up for it by listing everybody who was there, many of whom are in the room. Many of whom are in the room. Captured on our wedding DVD is the line that brought down the house. I'll quote Bill Kelly here. "Remember, Mike, you're not just marrying Nari, you're also marrying a small liberal arts college in Western Massachusetts." Mike and our 3 sons aren't here this weekend. After joining me at my 15th, my 20th, when Sam and Leo were 6-month-old twins, and 25th reunions, Mike concluded, "Honey, I know it's nirvana for you, but for me and the boys, it's just a 3-hour drive there and a 3-hour drive back. Have fun." When invited to speak here today, I asked how my name came up. Leila Durstein told me that this year, all alumni on our speaker shortlist happen to have had outsized impact across educational nonprofit settings, particularly in producing the next generation of leaders. So I'll close with that theme in mind. As an executive recruiter, I often say that my job is not to find the perfect person for our clients, but to provide them with the most interesting set of great choices. Over the past 20 years, I've placed something on the order of 250 people in various leadership roles across the country. It's been incredibly fascinating work. Just 2 more family pictures. This is us in Thailand last July. First time my kids and husband had been there, and first time I'd been there in more than 20 years, and also in Tokyo. Okay, here are some Nariisms, a term my team uses for the sayings and catchphrases that I've become known for sharing with clients, candidates, and colleagues. Some of these have been gleaned from different sources over the years. Taken as a whole, they form a set of guidelines for how I approach executive search. Let's see if the animation works. People get hired for what they know. People get fired for who they are. There is no such thing as a personality transplant. The best leaders build the best teams. Leadership is not how you see yourself, but how others see you. You need different leaders at different moments. What is it that your organization does that no one else does as well or at all, and why does that matter? Nobody thinks they have an ugly baby. That is another talk also. Let's aim for culture add versus culture fit. Recruiting is a courtship. It is painful to be left at the altar, but it's worse and more expensive to get a divorce. When it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, everyone is at a different place in the journey. Meet people where they are and know that the work is never done. Thank you. My current firm, Koya Partners, was founded 2 decades ago with the motto, "The right person in the right place can change the world." My own addition is, with the right board. The right person in the right place with the right board can change the world. When I first moved into search, I thought I would make a difference in the world by placing leaders of mission-oriented organizations. But after a few years, I learned that the best nonprofit leaders could only be as effective as their boards. Or as a former candidate, good friend of mine put it, boards get the leaders they deserve. Managing committees of nonprofit board members is the most challenging, sometimes most nerve-wracking, yet absolutely most gratifying part of what I do. Unlike other hiring managers, nonprofit board members are all volunteers. So understanding why each of them chooses to dedicate their free time to a nonprofit organization is fundamental to being able to partner with them well. How I work with search committees is a microcosm of how my placements will partner with their board members. So I do my best to prepare nonprofit board members to partner effectively with the leaders they select to set them up to succeed together. And after 20 years in search, I've placed not only nonprofit leaders, but the next gen of leaders who will become the leaders in the next decades. It's been hard work at times, but never dull. In closing, while my work as an executive recruiter has been impactful, it's the connections and relationships I've built along the unexpected path I've been on, through work as well as in my life, that truly sustain me. Nearly 2 decades ago, Williams started me on this path. And those relationships and connections are among the most treasured and abiding of all. Thank you for listening today.
All right, Michele, you're not the only one that's going to sing here. Beneath their peaceful shadows may old Williams stand, till the suns and mountains never more shall be. The glory and the honor of our mountain land, and the dwelling of the gallant and the free. Thank God my 17-year-old daughter is not here. She would be absolutely mortified, but my 14-year-old is, and she's going to have a really good story to take home. I have to admit, I looked up the word gallant just to be sure I really knew what it meant, and came up with the following: smart, splendid, spirited, brave, and often self-sacrificing. Those descriptors are certainly ones I would use to describe the women who have been part of this fantastic event years prior, and my co-presenters today, Michele, Nari, Monsie, and in fact, all of the women who I'll probably run into at reunion this weekend. I'm sure any one of them could have been asked to give this talk and they would have been phenomenal. So I'm absolutely humbled to share time with you today. I would like to start with positionality, as I'm aware that my experiences that led me to Williams, I had during Williams, and I've enjoyed after Williams, are very unique to me being a white, affluent, heterosexual, cisgendered woman, now a mother, wife, surgeon, and dean. I know that some of what I'll say today may resonate with you, and maybe it won't. But my hope is that I can speak authentically, and in having this space to share perspective, we can gain perspective, and for that I'm grateful. My relationship with Williams began as a little sister, visiting my sister Jordan, class of '87, for football games, parents' weekend, other coveted times, that I could immerse myself in that oh-so-cool environment of college and imagine myself as a future student. I did do my fair share of looking around at schools, but ultimately I did apply to Williams' early decision. I'm going to take a short detour here and tell you that we recently renovated our home office. I had the bright idea to truly, actually purge. I spent evenings after work amidst a sea of papers, most of them useless, some of them really interesting. What I did come across, and yes, take note, this is my 30th reunion, were several documents related to Williams. One of them, a copy of a letter of introduction I wrote to Dean Darrow before matriculating as a student, as a freshman. It seems like this was something that we were asked to do, although I really have no recollection of writing it. To Dean Darrow, I wrote, "At Williams, I expect to truly find out who I am and personally grow more, exploring areas that I'm concerned with and have not had the opportunity to learn about, such as feminist thought, human philosophy, nature, the environment, the world today. I hope to become a free thinker, to learn and look at the world and its people from many different angles." Well, this started the second I set foot on this campus. Freshman year, my eyes were shot wide open, along with Art History 101, Philosophy and Biology. I took Women's Studies 101, Intro to Feminist Thought, and I was totally blown away with the remarkable theorists and writers we explored. This was pretty different than public school on Long Island. I was even more so impressed by my classmates and their insightful and really downright brilliant critiques and commentary. I continued taking a range of classes sophomore year: econ, English, philosophy, history, and I appreciated the interconnectedness of different areas, with foundational thought converging in classes like gender and economic analysis, history of sexuality in the US, political thinking about women, representation of women in film, language, gender, power. Well, I think you get the idea. These were taught by forward-thinking, really rad women like Linda Bunsen, Janice Sawicki, Regina Kunzel, and Carol Achman. I mean, just to give you an idea of how cool Carol Achman is, when I recently Googled her, the first thing that came up on the feed was a picture of her interviewing Patti Smith. I mean, who wouldn't want to take these classes? And why couldn't I major in them? Well, it turns out that I could. Williams gave me the opportunity to create my own major with a contract major. I can't recall exactly what I needed to get the idea approved, but in my purging, I did find the letter sent to me from the dean's office informing me that the Committee on Educational Policy approved my proposed major in what I called gender studies. I was ahead of the curve with that one in 1992, with women's gender and sexuality studies becoming an official major here at Williams in 2002. So I dove headfirst into what it meant to have a liberal arts education. Along with my contract major, Williams also gave me the opportunity to apply to the Science and Humanities program at Mount Sinai School of Medicine in my sophomore year. Sinai had a relationship with Williams where they accepted about 5 EIFs a year to their landmark program, established by Sinai in 1987, 4 years prior to when they admitted me. This was to encourage students with a humanities background to consider a medical career. The premise was that a liberal arts education builds students who will be successful in medical school, perhaps with enhanced communication skills and a more humanistic approach to medicine. Well, research proves Sinai was right. Students like me, without any pre-med requirements or an MCAT, performed on par or outperformed their pre-med peers. Sinai was also really right to partner with a school like Williams for this landmark program, and I can't tell you how grateful I am that they did. Williams not only gave me the ability to build my own major, but opened my life to medicine. Williams also gave me a foundation of resilience, curiosity, critical thinking, and compassion for different lived experiences. The education that I was able to receive through my contract major emphasized the significance of understanding the human experience from different lenses, a perspective that I believe has been critical in my medical career and as an educator. I now also realize that Williams helped me develop one of the things I truly value about medicine: the privilege and agency to engage in candid conversations with people about intimate and often stigmatized aspects of their life. After residency in OBGYN and a fellowship in urogynecology and reconstructive pelvic surgery, I'm now able to validate patients' lived experiences, normalize symptoms they find shameful and embarrassing, and dispel perceptions about pelvic floor disorders like prolapse and incontinence that are misinformed. By performing detailed creative surgery, I'm able to restore anatomic form and function, but also enhance quality of life. I'm so incredibly lucky to dedicate my clinical work to restoring a patient's dignity and to apply science, medicine, and surgery to improve lives locally and globally. This definitely was not what I had in mind when I was listening to Professors Achman and Kunzel, but they were absolutely integral to me finding this path. Being a medical educator has been a serious joy multiplier for me. The privilege and ability to influence the next generation of healthcare providers has been deeply rewarding. The lessons I took away from my interconnected areas of study at Williams 30 years ago, most specifically the lesson of understanding the human experience from different lenses, are ones that are so important today as I oversee a medical school where we are dedicated to anti-racism, health equity, holistic patient-centered care, well-being, and diversity in all of its forms. As part of my work, I also oversee our 8-year BA/MD program, a program focused on liberal arts and minimal pre-med requirements, which is much like my humanities and medicine program, building on my belief that pre-med is not the only or even the best way to enter medicine. There's still time, Nari. I am privileged to work with brilliant students and colleagues every day to help me rethink medical education. Education is truly empowering. My education at Williams has allowed me to make meaningful contributions to the world that have taken different forms, and I'm filled with gratitude for those experiences, people, and the perspectives that Williams has afforded me. This is truly a place where the Gallant dwell. Smart, splendid, spirited, brave, and often self-sacrificing. Thank you.
On the first day of school, after taking attendance, welcoming students to my class, and doing a get-to-know-you activity, I offer my students their first assignment: to create an autobiography of themselves as readers. For part one, I asked them to think back on their early childhood and conjure up the stories that had an impact on them. Stories from books they read with the adults in their lives, stories they heard at school, or stories passed on by family members. Any story, really, that taught them a lesson or had an impact on them, even if they didn't realize it at the time. I'd like to share with you the story that always comes to mind first for me. It is the story of my family coming to the United States, which my mom told me for the first time around the age of 4. It starts in 1947, when mi abuelito, my grandfather Filemon, made his way from the Central Valley of Mexico to Calexico, California, at the age of 17. Mi abuelito, like so many other Mexican men, hoped they would be accepted as a bracero, an agricultural worker, through the bracero program. See, mi abuelito lost his father at the age of 2, and his mom and siblings all had to work in order to earn money for their family. After marrying mi abuelita, my grandmother Catalina, and this is a picture of them about 5 years ago, he continued to come back and forth between Mexico and California to work during the harvesting season, now with a partner and 3 young daughters in tow. From 1947 until 1992, when he finally retired, my grandfather, and by extension my grandmother, and really the whole family, worked the land in this country so that we all had access to food at our tables. In fact, I was born just down the road from the strawberry fields, where several of my family members worked as pickers for many years, a place that my parents and I left just before I turned 4 in search of a place that could offer more and different opportunities for them for a better future. From this story, my takeaway is that I come from a strong, resilient people. We work hard, we care for each other, and we just make it work. Now, I'm going to ask you to humor me for a moment and to do the same thing I ask my students to do. Think back to your childhood and consider the stories that were shared with you by people in your life, parents, guardians, caretakers, through books or oral traditions. As you are reminiscing, I want you to think about who was there with you when you heard that story for the first time. How old were you? Is there a specific emotion that arises when you think of this story? What was your takeaway? I'm going to give you 20 seconds to think back, capture a specific story. There's no right or wrong way to do this, okay? And I'm only giving you a brief amount of time on purpose. We could, get into reminiscing and it could go on for a while. So it can be a story from a book. It can be a story that was told to you, that was passed down orally. But that's your task. Ready? Go. Got it? Great. Now we're all equipped with the story. I want you to ask yourself, why did that story resonate with you so deeply? Is it because you connect with the experience of the characters? Is it because the story is so very different from your lived reality that you're left wondering what it would be like to share that particular experience? Or perhaps a little bit of both. Thinking through the connections or lack thereof between your lived experience and that of the characters in the story you chose is part 2 of the assignment. Determining whether a story is a window, a mirror, or a sliding glass door. In 1988, educator Emily Stile introduced the phrase windows and mirrors as a framework for curriculum and education that creates a, quote, balanced, ecological sense of a student's place in the world, end quote. In 1990, multicultural education scholar Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop further developed the concept by suggesting that children ought to see windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors related to their lived experience in the books they read. A window is a story that allows you to have a view into someone else's experience, to see a new culture, a new identity, a new point of view. A mirror story reflects your own experience, helps you build your own identity, and provides a moment of self-affirmation. A sliding glass door story allows you to enter a story and become part of it, whether you have any connection to it whatsoever. Dr. Bishop argues that it is critical for all students to have all 3 of these types of books available to them if they are to learn about themselves and their peers, to build those relationships. She points out how historically access to mirror texts is far more limited for students of color. And I would add to that this is also the case for students who are members of other marginalized identities, such as those that identify as neurodiverse or members of the LGBTQ+ community, to name a few. So let's get back to the second part of the assignment. Think about whether the story you conjured up resonates with you because it is a window, a mirror, or a sliding glass door, or perhaps a combination. See, when I was a child, mi abuelito's story was both a window and a mirror for me. It modeled the mindset that I felt like I needed to embody in order to find success. Hard work can overcome anything. Then I arrived at Williams, and for the first time, had the chance to learn the history behind the Bracero program, from the horrifying working conditions to the systemic oppression built into the system. I realized that hard work is indeed a necessary component in any task. It also feeds into the myth that hard work always pays off because it is valued above all else, or it's equal to other forms of power and influence. Moreover, I learned this history for the first time from someone that looked like me. In my pre-K through 12 experience, which was entirely in Texas, I had only ever seen one teacher that shared my ethnic background, and they taught Spanish. So I want to take this moment to thank the faculty of the Latino Studies program, Professors Whalen, Cepeda, Jota, Chavoya, Professor Peacock, Marcela Peacock, and many others whose presence was a mirror for me on this campus and whose classes were sliding glass doors. They pushed open the window. They wiped the mirror clean. They nudged me to step through the door into my own experience by offering a different point of view, new context, and a lot of support. The impact this department had on my life is unquantifiable. Because of them, I became involved in what is now the Allison Davis Research Fellowship, which is the reason I am an educator. Now, when you think about your story again, think through the lens of Dr. Bishop's mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. I hope you will also consider who in your life has opened your window to new possibilities, wiped away self-doubt and self-judgment, and invited you to cross the threshold into a new world. The people of Williams were that for me. And I hope that the alumni of Williams can continue to be that for others. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for attending our 10th annual Dwelling of the Gallant. I hope you'll join me again in thanking our panelists for their amazing contributions. Thank you so much.